So after all things have been considered, which phone is worth it? The iPhone 10 or the iPhone 12 mini? So as you guys probably know, I've been using the iPhone 12 mini for quite some time, and I've actually really enjoyed my experience with it. But recently, another phone that I picked up was this guy, the iPhone 10 from 2017. And it got me thinking, which phone is worth it in 2021? The iPhone 12 mini or the iPhone X? As always, timestamps are going to be down below in the description, so check out whichever part interests you most. Alright, so starting off with the externals, let's begin with the iPhone X. Now, first thing that you're going to notice is that the iPhone X has a much bigger body than the iPhone 12 mini. So the iPhone X has a way bigger body, as well as that old curved design, which is a little bit more ergonomic in the hands. Next up is the display, and obviously on the iPhone X, you're getting a way bigger screen than the iPhone 12 mini. Now, actually comparing the two screens side by side, the iPhone 12 mini screen is just a little bit sharper with more contrast, and it does look a tad bit better, but honestly, you would not be able to notice it unless you had both devices in hand. Next up are the speakers, and this actually surprised me because on the iPhone 10, I found that the speakers were actually worse than the iPhone 12 mini. Now, the speakers weren't bad or anything, but it was not what I expected. And finally, externally comes the camera. Now, this camera, it's nothing to go crazy about. There's nothing really special about it. You have your main lens and your telephoto lens, and that's pretty much it. Now, when it comes to the externals of the iPhone 12 mini, the form factor on this phone is really, really nice. As you can see, this phone is small and compact, and it feels really good in the hands. While you might think that the edges are not as ergonomic for the hands, I've actually found it to be really comfortable. But this compact design does come at a cost, and with this phone, you're getting a way smaller screen. Now, really, this comes down to personal preference, whether you like big phones or small phones, and with this phone, I found the reachability to be extremely good because you can get your finger all across this phone. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, be sure to check out the iPhone 12 mini review. Next up are the speakers, and I found these speakers to be actually surprisingly good. Considering the size of this phone and how small it is, the sound that it produces is actually amazing. And finally, the camera unit. Now, you are getting an upgraded camera on this phone because the lens itself is just bigger, but what you also get on this phone, and what makes it better than the iPhone X, is the fact that you get a wide angle lens on this device. And I found that a wide angle lens is just more practical and way more useful than a telephoto lens. Not to mention that you still get your portrait mode, and you even get the wide angle lens on the selfie camera, which is just really useful. So overall, in terms of the externals between these two phones, I've got to give it to the iPhone 12 mini. Next up are the internals, and starting off with the iPhone X, in this phone you're getting the A11 chip. Now, compared to the iPhone 12, this chip works completely fine for everyday tasks. It's still fast, still snappy, and it overall works pretty good. The only issue when compared to the iPhone 12 is that when you do really intensive things, especially when it comes to gaming, you're really going to notice this phone start to get hot or even struggle a little bit. Along with the chip, you also get a really solid battery life in this phone, obviously because it's bigger, but in general, this is going to last you all day, even longer. Next up is the iPhone 12 mini, and in this phone, you have the insane A13 chip. Now, honestly, it's kind of crazy how fast this chip is. Literally everything on this phone feels lightning fast, whether that be unlocking with Face ID or loading in apps, just everything. You don't have to wait for anything. Everything is fast. Along with the chip, you also have a really solid battery life in this phone, which is surprising because of its size, but it's just so well optimized with that A13 chip that this phone's battery life is surprisingly good. But this good battery life only happens when you don't push the phone to the limits, but more on that later. Some other cool things that are inside this phone is the fact that this phone has access to MagSafe, which as time goes on is just going to grow and grow in Apple's accessories, as well as access to 5G, which does set you up nicely when it comes to future-proofing. So overall, between the internals of these two devices, again, I've got to give it to the iPhone 12 mini. But obviously, these phones aren't perfect. So starting off with the iPhone 10, here are the drawbacks. Like we talked about before, when it comes to the X, it does run a touch slower than the 12, but again, you wouldn't really notice this unless you had both devices in hand. Not only that, but this phone does have worse speakers than the iPhone 12 mini, which is pretty ironic considering its size. And finally, Apple doesn't sell this phone anymore, so you're going to have to buy it used, which is a blessing and a curse, but more on that later. As for the iPhone 12 mini's drawbacks, you're really going to notice an impact on the battery life when you're doing intensive things like FaceTime or gaming. The battery life is just going to start to suffer because of how small this phone is. And finally, Additionally, again, this one's pretty obvious, but you are getting a smaller screen than the 10. Now, whether that's a good thing or bad thing to you, that's really personal preference, and I'd actually love to hear that down below in the comments. But the fact of the matter is that you're going to be seeing less on this phone. And now, the part which is probably most interesting to me is the price. Now, the crazy thing is that this iPhone X from 2017 that looks like the phones that are being released today in 2021 or whenever you're watching this video. The crazy thing is that you can actually pick this phone up for around $300, which is $100 less than Apple's cheapest phone. And I mean, look at that thing. And now the iPhone 12 mini does start off at $729, which is still a competitive price for that mid-range lineup of devices, but is definitely not close to $300. So after all things have been considered, which phone is worth it, the iPhone 10 or the iPhone 12 mini? So since we are directly comparing this to the iPhone 12 mini, this phone is marginally and technically worse than the iPhone 12 mini in most areas. And even though it is only a little bit worse, you are getting it at a significantly lower price. And the same thing applies to the iPhone 12 mini. It's only marginally better than the iPhone X in most areas. And yes, you are going to be better future-proofed with this device because of the A13, 5G, and even MagSafe. I don't know if that justifies being over double the price of the iPhone X. So if you can sacrifice the minor luxuries of the latest and greatest, then the iPhone X is still an amazing deal. And if you want something that is small, compact, and that will last a long time, the iPhone 12 mini is still a great option. But in terms of these two devices, it's not a better deal just because of the price that you're paying for the value that you're getting. And just like either two of these phones could provide you a lot of value, if this video has provided you any value, it would really help my channel if you left a like and even subscribed if you want more videos just like this one. More videos are on the way, so hit the bell icon if you don't want to miss them. I'm Matt, and thanks for watching.